Hey guys, it's Jay from Wedding Film School here to review Lumix's new full-frame beast, the S5II, and I will get this out of the way right at the beginning. Lumix finally did it. They fixed their autofocus. Lumix shooters rejoice! I'm going to show you guys all the cool new features of this camera, as well as one big reason why you may not want to buy it, even if you are a Lumix shooter. Let's check it out. Before we get to this review, let's get the disclosures out of the way for integrity purposes. Lumix did give us this camera as well as this camera, but they did not get a chance to review this video before it was released. Lumix was also nice enough to fly Wedding Film School out to Tokyo to get our hands on this camera as well. And to be honest, it was a super cool opportunity and something we're super thankful for. But it's not about us. We're not here to talk about Wedding Film School. We're here to talk about the S5II, so let's get to it. So the S5II is a follow-up to the hugely successful S5, and Lumix didn't just upgrade the camera though. In many ways, the S5II is a totally different shooting experience than its predecessor. We've had this camera for about 30 days, and we got to do everything from running gun shooting in Japan, to a styled shoot, to real weddings, and I gotta say, I really do think this camera is worth the upgrade for Lumix shooters, especially people who are on the L system of glass. And maybe, just maybe, it might even entice some of you Canon and Sony shooters to take a very serious look at Lumix and L glass. It's really competitive. We're gonna dig into these new features and how it measures up with its competitors, especially the new hybrid phase detect autofocus so many Lumix shooters have been wanting for so long. We're even gonna talk through our experiences using this camera at a real wedding. But before we do that, let's talk specs. The S5II is a full-frame camera that shoots 10-bit 422 4K 23.98 full frame and 10-bit 422 4K 60 with an APS-C crop. But it can actually shoot up to 6K, albeit only in 29.9732 aspect ratio and a 10-bit 420 color space. As a wedding filmmaker, I don't really use LVFs that much. They're not really a big deal to me, but I have to be honest, I do prefer a tilt screen over the flip out screen, but I feel like I might be in the minority there, so let us know in the comments what you prefer, flip out or tilt. That being said, the screen is very bright, the touch controls are very responsive. Many people love Lumix because of the ability to shoot unlimited record times, and now you can do the same thing with the S5II. In order to make this happen, they've invented something, a really unexpected innovation, which is a cooling fan. Like, it's actually really cool. It's built right here, like right into this little area. The new heat dispersion system combines a really small fan and special heat sink, so there should be no overheating issues. And as a wedding filmmaker, we know this can be like a really major deal when you have 3 cameras and super hot sun. Honestly, it feels really good when a camera company takes the concerns that we have as wedding filmmakers seriously, so good on you, Lumix. In terms of scopes and whatnot, the S5II has all the standard video assist functions, waveform monitors, vector scope, zebra pattern. You actually have 2 zebra patterns at once, which is pretty cool. It has all the standard modern IOs, full-size HDMI.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Thank you, not micro. Thank you. Obviously, the screen's articulation is still obstructed when the HDMI is plugged in, but it does have, to me, enough tilt even when plugged in. Luckily, the mic input is totally clear and allows for a full range of motion, so we should be good there. On the audio input, one cool thing is that Lumix allows 2 levels for input gain, standard and low. I'm assuming that's code for line and mic, but I'm not really sure, so don't quote me on that. As well as gain adjustment on the recording level. It's not a huge deal, but it's nice to know that you have that level of adjustment and attenuation should you need it. By the way, I didn't test this input, so I'm not telling you guys to go plug your camera into the DJ sound system at a wedding. In terms of autofocus, Lumix has rolled out a brand new Phase Hybrid Autofocus, as well as increasing the AF points to 779 to bring it in line with the likes of the Sony R4. It's got 3 AF detection modes: human, face and eye, and animal. We're gonna spend a lot more time talking about that new autofocus system, by the way, so don't you worry. That's it for all the nerd stuff. Let's talk about actually using the camera. Anyone who shoots weddings or any kind of thing where they're holding a camera in their hands for a living knows that using a camera in the field can be way different and a much different experience than just looking at specs. Because of that, we wanted to put the Lumix S5II through its paces. Lumix was nice enough to bring us and a bunch of other YouTubers to Japan to get our hands on the S5II firsthand. So we wanted to give you guys our first impression and a little taste of one of our favorite countries.
What's up, guys? We are here downtown Tokyo doing some tests for this brand new camera that we just got our hands on.
Yeah, and we're gonna be testing a bunch of different features today. We're autofocus stuff, unique, challenging environments that we think if it can pass these tests, it can handle a wedding. Let's see what this Lumix S5II can do. We're in the Asakusa neighborhood, and we're just kind of testing some street photography, and we're kind of looking at how is this camera performing in these really dynamic situations. So that this is a really great environment, super high sun, kind of early morning-ish, and then really deep shadows, really bright highlights. So let's check it out.
Jay, what did you find?
Like, this is like one of those YouTube donuts. I want the YouTube donut. There you go. Yay! I'm gonna do just a quick like IBIS test. I'm gonna turn on the IBIS and I'm gonna turn on the E-stabilization. And I'm just gonna kind of walk and human gimbal this walk because it looks dope. And we got all this really cool, it's just a really cool street. So this is the international travel rule I have. If I go to any country, I have to eat McDonald's. I want to see their take on it, and I'm never disappointed. And I hear Japan's McDonald's is, there it is, the legendary teriyaki McBurger, and I'm getting this. This is delicious. A little more sauce than I would like.
That's nice. It's different and it's nice.
That was a blast, and I loved being with my friends in Japan and shooting and having a great time. And after using this camera for over a month, I have to say, the build quality and overall feel are amazing. The body feels nice and grippy without being too rubbery or fragile. I believe it shares the same body as the S5. The only major difference I could really discern between the S5 and the S5II was like a beefier cold shoe where the bigger OLED LVF and the new fan are built in. The buttons and dials have a distinctly sturdy and clicky feel. The old 4-way joystick has been replaced by a much better 8-way joystick. 4-way joysticks suck, by the way. I found all the buttons to be accessible and easy to depress with a very pleasing feedback when you push them down. While we're on the subject of buttons, let me show you how easy it is to customize the buttons on this thing. It's actually one of my favorite features. All you gotta do, pick the button you want. In this case, I'll pick the exposure compensation button because I hold that exposure compensation is useless for video. Hold it down. There it is. I can customize the button with just holding a button down, and you can do this with basically any button on there. It makes it so fast, you don't have to dig through any of the menus. I love it. In wedding filmmaking, build quality and overall feel, they're just really important. You gotta be able to trust and rely on your tool. And I really think Lumix has nailed it with the S5II. The image on the S5II is excellent. We ran some very basic tests with the Sony A7IV, the Canon R6, and the S5II. All the images are shot in log in their native ISO and converted to a Rec. 709 conversion. The skin tones on the Lumix tend to be, I think, somewhere between Canon's more magenta image and Sony's more green image. I feel like you can't go wrong with any of these color systems, by the way. In some ways it's just taste, but it's kind of nice to know where they all land. And I would say the Lumix is a little more magenta maybe than a totally natural skin tone, but it's definitely not close to as magenta as the Canon. Very excellent and actually very easy to work with image because of its neutrality. The S5II has 21 photo styles to choose from, pretty much everywhere from a standard fair Rec. 709 look to the uber contrasty looks, all the way to Vlog. Within those photo styles, you have 3 different sets of dual native ISO points depending on which style you choose. In my opinion, one of the most compelling features that Lumix has added to this camera is the ability to load 33-point LUTs onto the camera, which is a step up than maybe a preview LUT that you might be able to upload on the previous generations of Lumix. This is a great addition because it lets you add LUTs onto your 4 custom photo styles. Each look you create can be built on any of the standard photo styles, meaning you can shoot a finished look in camera, saving time in post. You can also use any LUT in your Vlog and HLog View Assist. Couple that with real-time LUT photo style built on Vlog, and you have more options than ever in a Lumix camera to create a faster look and reduce color grading in post. I know many of you guys would rather just shoot a flat or a log profile and not bake a LUT into the look, and you can still do that. But having more workflow options and using a 33-point LUT instead of a preview quality LUT, I think is pretty awesome, especially in wedding filmmaking. While we're talking about the sensor, let's talk a little bit about camera noise and low light performance. The camera has a very clean image overall, although in log, I might want to jump really straight out of 2500 all the way to that second dual native ISO point of 4000, just to avoid that noise. In low light, it's no A7S III, but it's very competitive with the A7IV and the R6. Lumix has always been known for their IBIS, or in-body image stabilization, and the S5II improves on this already stellar reputation with 6.5 stops of IS, which is really awesome. We tested this IBIS on the streets of Tokyo with both E stabilization on and off, just to kind of see how it performs and how the jello was. As you can see, when we use this thing very aggressively, there is a bit of edged jello on the frame, although Lumix has since released a firmware upgrade that seems to improve this a little bit, but it's not too bad. And in normal shooting situations, I found the E-stabilization actually to be really, really nice. It worked really well. One thing to keep in mind though, as all E-stabilization, this does have a little bit of a crop when you turn it on. Tripod mode, or as Lumix calls it, Boost IS, also works super well. Even on a 200mm lens, we found the performance to be super reliable. So let's focus this review on autofocus. Yeah, you're right. I can't do that. Go back, get rid. Now let's talk about the thing we all came to discuss, the new autofocus system. As many of you guys know, Lumix has maybe not have the best reputation for autofocus when it comes to video. Quite frankly, it was pretty terrible, actually. Anyone who loves shooting Lumix would immediately tell you like, oh, but the autofocus. It's just been a thing. It wasn't really their fault, but I'm here to say it's a lot better now. See, Lumix was using a system previously called contrast detection. This system is fast and it's accurate when the conditions are right. In some ways, actually faster than phase detect autofocus. But in weddings, the conditions are not really right a lot of the time, which really caused a lot of unreliability and made it just kind of basically useless. The good news is, with the S5II, they're finally stepping into the world of phase detect autofocus. And let me tell you, it's a hugely welcome change. Lumix calls it Phase Hybrid Autofocus. Just look at the difference between the S5 and the S5II. This is a typical situation. Contrast detection would struggle when the subject is backlit and it just can't find the edges. As you can see, it's totally losing subject, while the S5II is much more reliably holding on. We tested the new Phase Hybrid Autofocus system as well as the subject detection on the busy streets of Tokyo, and while every camera struggles in conditions like this, we found it to be perfectly in line with what we would expect from a modern mirrorless camera. It was plenty snappy, and it did a really solid job staying locked on to the subjects with minimal issues associated with the old system popping up, such as issues when it's backlit, maybe the subject is pulsing or infinitely back focusing. A lot of that stuff seems to be totally remedied. I think the new system actually makes it very, very competitive on the market, and I think like a real option for the gimbal-loving wedding filmmakers, and that's amazing to have more options. Now, it's one thing to test the subject detection in the crazy streets of Tokyo, but in terms of how a wedding filmmaker will actually use the camera, probably not the most accurate test. So we wanted to put it in a portrait situation. So Jared took the S5II to a styled shoot to see how the S5II's new AF system and subject detection work in a portrait environment.
Hey guys, Jared here, and we are about to do some tests with the new S5II to see if it lives up to the hype, specifically when talking about autofocus. So I'm gonna wanna see how this camera interacts with my subject today. We have an awesome model, Jalissa, and we're gonna really be putting it through a real world test that I would encounter at a wedding working with a person. Let's go check it out. I'm gonna switch it over to continuous autofocus, see how our facial detection is working with her face as she's moving around, if she can stay locked on to her eyes. Can you do what you were doing with your hair before, where you kind of like were playing with it a little bit, just kind of like, yeah, just like that. Love that. Look here. Love that. Very nice. Love that. One of the autofocus features allows you to switch between face and eye, kind of a more classic autofocus system, to human detecting subject. Which will switch from face and eye to kind of full body human if they are walking away and they come to like a full body. So we're gonna quickly run a test where hopefully it switches between a full kind of body as someone's walking up to the camera, and it switches over to eye detection. So let's check that out. Okay, go ahead, walk on up. Great, love that. Cool. The idea with this test is just give you an idea how it switches between, full body human mode to eye detection. So if you are a little bit farther away, maybe you're doing some gimbal work, that maybe this could be applicable to what you're trying to do. So this next test is called the turnaround test, which is a very original name for this test, where essentially we're just testing out how the autofocus reacts when a subject turns around and the camera loses track of the face. Will the camera hunt a little bit? Let's check it out. Nice. Now one more time. Beautiful. Love it. It's actually doing pretty well. Great. One more time and we'll be good. You can turn around fully too. Yeah. Great. So you know what I'm noticing about this camera is, as I'm doing like a parallax around Jalissa, where the autofocus is locking on the closest eye really well. So as I switch from one side to the other, as soon as I reach the other side of her face, it's locking on the closest eye, which is what I think most videographers, most photographers are going to look for if they're really shooting at a really shallow depth of field. Which is great, which is something that intuitively I would want out of my autofocus system, so it's good. Okay, so just wrapped up our shoot here in Walpole, and what are my main kind of takeaways from the camera? I think overall it did a great job of doing exactly what I wanted it to do. It was very accurate in terms of what subject I was trying to tell it to do, and it's very intuitive as a person who really hasn't worked with Lumix cameras a lot in the past. I was able to pick this thing up and get right to work and get my autofocus super accurate, super fast, super sharp. Overall, really impressed, really fun camera.
We decided to put the new Lumix AF in a head-to-head test between the Canon R6 and the Sony A7IV. And I just have to thank our friends over at Lens Pro To Go for letting us use some lenses and some camera bodies just to run these tests. If you need lens rental stuff for your wedding filmmaking needs, head over Lens Pro To Go, they're awesome. We wanted to put it in a crappy low light environment, which I think happens a lot at weddings, and we ran the same test 3 times. First, a subject entering the frame in one light level and walking towards the frame. The second test we ran was a subject entering the frame with their back turned and then having another subject enter the frame. It's pretty stunning to see how badly the S5I performed, but it's also pretty interesting to see how competitive the new system is with the undisputed kings of the full-frame mirrorless hybrid shooting market. I honestly wasn't sure what to expect here, and I kind of have a hard time really picking the winner. I will say I do not like the way that Lumix handles tap to track function. It kind of has like an extra clunky step of like half depressing the shutter button or other things, and I just kind of want to tap and go. I don't want to be thinking about my camera body. But other than that, the S5II is now in the conversation with the R6 and the A7IV for anyone considering a mirrorless hybrid photo video camera with cropped 4K 60. It's that good. And having more good options is amazing for consumers. But how about not just more options, but cheaper options? The S5II is coming in hot at $1999 in the US, and that's a lot cheaper, as of now at least, than the A7IV and the R6. If you're a Lumix shooter, I think the combination of the new features, excellent L-glass, and the price makes the upgrade kind of a no-brainer. Or does it? Because Panasonic is also releasing a dope-looking all-black S5II in a few months that will feature ProRes RAW recording via HDMI, as well as recording via USB-C for only $200-ish more. So you may want to hold out just a little bit longer and use that pre-order for the X model if those video focus features are interesting to you. To close the video out, I want to talk about my experience as a new Lumix shooter, particularly shooting a wedding with it. I'm not a Lumix shooter previously, by the way, so it was all new to me. And I had the opportunity to shoot a New Year's Eve wedding with the S5II. We really wanted to put it through its paces, so we shot vlog. A few things stood out to me when I was using this camera in more real-life environment that maybe didn't stand out as much when we're running tests or kind of just goofing off in Japan. So first of all, the camera feels really great. And the IBIS is incredible and super useful, especially when you don't try to pretend to, like it's a gimbal. You know, you just kind of use the tool the way it's supposed to be used to help reduce a little bit of shake. Makes portrait sessions super easy. It makes shooting details really easy. I mean, it's a really, really great IBIS system, and I liked it a lot. Even without the E-stabilization enabled, it was super useful, and I think it really improved the shots and made the camera more reliable, which I think is the name of the game when it comes to wedding filmmaking. While the autofocus system performed in all the right ways, I think just in terms of wedding filmmaking, I don't use AF maybe as much as some other shooters, and so for me, I found it a little distracting to have to always make sure I was on the right setting and using the right mode and making sure it was tracking all these things, which means I didn't really get the full benefit of the feature. I think in the hands of maybe a more experienced shooter when it comes to Lumix, the image would be pristine. I really enjoyed the skin tones. And even how it rendered those crazy oversaturated DJ uplights. It's a really nice looking image and really easy to get a good image out of the camera. Overall, the S5II is a super compelling entry into the full-frame mirrorless camera market. It gives Lumix shooters a real reason to upgrade to the S5II or the S5II, and it's poised to give Sony and Canon a run for their money, I promise you. As a non-Lumix shooter myself, I was super impressed. And I can't wait for their full-frame, uncropped 4K 60 A7S3 R5 competitor to come out. Fingers crossed. Let's do this, Lumix. The new AF, amazing IBIS, great feel and build quality, and flexible color just puts the S5II in every conversation with a person saying, I'm looking to get into wedding filmmaking. It's cheaper, and in many ways, it's just as good or better than its competition. And all in all, that's super good for all filmmakers. You watched the whole video, why not like, subscribe, and do all the YouTube stuff? And also, if you didn't know, we have a second channel, The Wedding Film School Show, where we talk about business and a lot of other stuff, and we interview some really awesome wedding filmmakers. See you guys later.